Steve, I think it will surprise a lot of people to know that Fort MacArthur, in addition to being a military museum, also is a repository of military animals.
Yeah, that's true. It was kind of a surprise for me as well. It has commonly been called the pet cemetery, which it was. It was actually a cemetery where military personnel, when their pets died, they could bury them here. But later it took on a more kind of important significance. This is where the remains of the Nike era guard dogs are interred. And what makes that significant is these dogs were so trained, they were trained to kill you. And the reason for that is because we had nuclear warheads on our missiles. We couldn't have saboteurs, that's what we called terrorists in those days. We couldn't have saboteurs come in, so the dogs were literally trained to kill you. When the SALT Treaty came about and did away with the Nike missile, there was no reason to keep the dogs, so they simply euthanized them. And so then they buried them here. So our dogs that served us, their reward was to be put to sleep. And we think they deserve a nice resting place. Right. And so the community got together with the museum and we helped build this, what we think is a very lovely cemetery.
For dog lovers, do you know what kind of dogs they were?
Mostly these would have been German Shepherds, mostly, highly trained.
One of the biggest fears of American bomber crews and Royal Air Force bomber crews in World War II, when they went on raids over occupied Europe, was to be caught in the beam of a searchlight.
When you get trapped in one of those, it's hard to get out, because once one light is on you, then the other lights are directed to keep their focus on you, and even as you move along, as you progress through the target, anywhere there's a light, they're on you. And of course the guns then have something that they can see and shoot at.
Do you ever put these lights out? I don't mean lights out in that sense, but do you ever put them outside on display and, you know, have them shine in the sky?
Yes, frequently we do special events where we bring them out and light them up for folks, and it's always a treat.
This is one of the most interesting vehicles I think I've ever sat in my life. It's obviously not a 2009 model, but Steve, what exactly is this?
You're in a 1918 Dodge Brothers light repair truck. So it's a very early American military vehicle. It's one of 4 in the world. It's a cross between, let's say, a horse-drawn wagon and, you know, the internal combustion engine. Of course, they've been around for quite some time by 1918, but it still has those traces of not really sure what it is, car or cart, so to speak. And
I love your answer.
Yeah, it's kind of a unique driving experience, let me tell you.
I'm sure it is. How did you get hold of it?
Believe it or not, eBay.
Okay, we're standing by what looks to me like a sort of Roman auditorium of the old days, but obviously it wasn't. What exactly is this, Steve?
Okay, this is the gun pit. So this should give you some scale as to when we talk about big guns, about the enormity of these guns. They were just giant. Underneath this wooden ramp down here is a hole that would basically hold a 60-ton counterweight, and that's what would pivot the gun up over the parapet here. And so you can imagine, if you have to have 60 tons to move your gun barrel, the kinds of kinetic energy that are being expended when the shell goes off. It lifts that 60 tons right back up into what we would call a loaded position in a split second. These are sort of our static exhibits, and what we do is we try to always have a person with you to guide you through and to explain these things to you. That's the optimum world. The reality is that oftentimes people will come and will have to self-guide themselves through here. We have informative panels, we have artifacts that are on exhibit, but again, our long-term mission is really to have a person-to-person contact with you so that you know what you're looking at, can be explained to you, and in many cases we could actually demonstrate a functioning piece of equipment. This point at one time, as scenic and beautiful it is now, at one time, it was bristling with guns. It was a fort. It was designed for protection. It was very, very serious business.
So for someone who's a real history buff, then something like this, and even for people who aren't history buffs, this would give you a real insight into what went on here.
It should, I hope, surprise you, because it is so lovely out here that who would think that you would need all of this military hardware? And so once we get that initial surprise, then hopefully the education comes behind it, and I think almost anyone from any age group could learn something.
So next time you're wondering what to do in Los Angeles, come down here to San Pedro and Fort MacArthur. Until next time, I'm John Clayton.